put in my time, I've paid my dues, and I think the biggest thing is knowing the preparation that I've put in.
Amari Bailey, born February 17, 2004. Not even a month after what would be his final college basketball game, Amari Bailey's mother declared that her son was not only entering the NBA draft and testing the waters, but was in to stay, or in her words, full-fledged in. Bailey competed in one season with the UCLA Bruins, where he had an up-and-down year that started off a disappointment for the nation's top 10 prospect, former California Mr. Basketball, McDonald's All-American, and Sierra Canyon star, averaging just 10 points per game through the first 20 games. A lot of expectations were placed on Bailey to be a one-and-done prospect, and I think that got to everyone's head around him to live up to those expectations, and it caused him to skip steps, contrary to what some NBA writers believe. And now, just after 1 year in the NBA, 10 games to be exact, the Hornets have chosen not to submit a qualifying offer to their second-round pick for a little more than $1 million to keep the 20-year-old around much longer. He's now an unrestricted free agent searching for a new NBA home when he could have been one of the top picks in the 2024 NBA draft with much more certainty about his future, or at least a team investing 4 years, giving him the best possible chance at completing his development. Leaving college or turning pro early, that should be your biggest focus if you're taking such a life-changing step. I get the idea of a player and his family striking while the iron is hot, as they say, because an NBA opportunity is not going to happen for most players that pick up a basketball. But a lot of times, I don't think some of these players, nor their families who are in control of their business decisions, fully understand what even is a hot iron, specifically in this social media YouTube era. If you were to look on YouTube of any video from Amari Bailey's time in high school, you would think he was going to be a clear-cut future NBA superstar, with some of the titles, the crazy editing and thumbnails, making these kids look like superheroes. If you only pay attention to that, who can tell you the right decision isn't to get to the league as soon as possible? And that's the difference between an iron is hot and an as soon as possible mentality. On no draft board was Amari Bailey a first-round draft pick from as early as those 20 games at UCLA we talked about. In my opinion, his draft stock couldn't be any lower based on judging him off expectations. Sure, he turned it on later in the season, but it still wasn't enough to realistically think the best option was to leave school for a chance to say you're one and done, only to be given as limited as opportunity as possible as a second-round pick who a team could part ways with at any minute. Talented player in the right situation, but for these reasons, his growth is being stunted. What happened? Let's talk about it. Salute to Michael E. Jordan on IG for this request. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Amari Bailey is a 6'3" point guard shooting guard from Chicago, Illinois, born in New Orleans, Louisiana, but made his name playing for Sierra Canyon in Chatsworth, California. He was somewhat of a basketball prodigy who went from reality show appearances to starring for Sierra by his sophomore year in high school. By then, he had already won a CIF state championship, and by his junior year, he finished that season named California Mr. Basketball. Bailey was well on path to doing everything needed to be considered one of the best prospects in the nation. As mentioned, his high school highlight tapes show nothing less than a star, only if you look at them on a surface level. His senior year, he was the #1 player in California, 9th nationally, and the #2 shooting guard in the country. He was an easy McDonald's All-American selection, with one crucial step away from being as high as a lottery pick if he could play the next step correctly. Stunt number 1, leaving UCLA after 1 year. The thinking, for some reason, in many players who find themselves in a situation where their NBA positioning is borderline, too often rely on the mindset that they'd be better off learning from other pros and somehow develop faster by just being around the NBA. That couldn't be further from the truth in some cases, enough to where that shouldn't be your thinking at all. First off, the NBA is not and never was about individual player development. teams draft you with the expectation that you're ready to produce in some way for them right away or see a clear potential. Those players you think you're learning from are fighting for the same job as you and will hold you in position long enough to where the energy behind your potential in a team's mind fades no matter how old you are. Amari Bailey is 20 years old and the Hornets won't even invite him to a summer league. He was a top 10 high school player, 10th youngest in the NBA last season, and already the hype has settled. It's because a prospect has to worry about coming in ready to be who they've always been. Bailey, in my opinion, was nowhere near ready for the NBA for a lot of reasons. One of them being the same reason I think Josh Christopher is having the same hard time finding a team he can contribute to as well. Both are really undersized shooting guards that need to dominate the ball to be successful. Christopher in high school played the same D-Wade-esque combo guard mold that everything ran through him, and in the NBA, those days are over. Neither he nor Bailey at 6'3", if that, were coming into the NBA to dominate the ball without being a top 10 or lottery pick. In Bailey's case, certainly not a second-round pick. Teams felt if he wasn't dominating the ball, how else was he of help at his size and lack of experience, coming in and learning from the current stars or superstars on the team? With that play style, Bailey needed to dominate the NCAA and be a star there first before entering the draft. 11 points per game and pretty much nothing else, other than averaging more turnovers than assists, does not show that that style or you adjusting to a different one was successful enough and caused him to fall to the 41st pick, one that set him up for what we have now. Stunt number 2, a star or else. Secondly, I believe a guy in the mold of Bailey, again, like Christopher, are stars or nothing else kind of players, even more than their game style not fitting the NBA. If Bailey isn't putting up 25 points per game, he's really not giving you anything else. And that's not a knock on him, because I think with more amateur development, mainly to his confidence along with evidence it could work to show teams he could have been a nice player. But opportunity isn't there in the NBA for undersized shooting guards that don't create much for others, aren't great off-ball slashers and finishers, rebounders, defenders, or can't even take over as a scorer. All things an undersized shooting guard like Dwayne Wade was great at. It's why Cam Thomas can always have an opportunity in the league. He can really go for 50 on any given night. No, he adds nothing else other than scoring, but he can really score and has proven that on all levels, including the NBA. Being a second-round pick, Bailey signed a two-way contract with the Hornets, playing 23 games in the G League and another 10 in the NBA. He played well in the G League, averaging 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists, shooting 42% from 3, attempting 3.8 a game. But in his 10 NBA games, he averaged 2 points, 1 rebound, and 1 assist, shooting 12% from 3 in 6 minutes per game. It showed a few things. One, that the G League is vastly different than the NBA in talent, that Bailey still left more to be desired all around, and most importantly, opportunity wasn't there for the second-round pick. It all stems from not putting himself in a better position leaving college by returning and developing other ways to be effective on the floor or becoming a confident star entering the league. Stunt number 3, opportunity. With that said, sometimes all that separates one player from the other is opportunity. Like mentioned, I think Bailey at the right time and the right situation could be a nice player, but opportunity to build the confidence to be one he hasn't had since high school was never there for him last season, drafted to a team like the Hornets, who are guard heavy already, without much emphasis being placed on developing their 41st overall pick. A lot of teams simply don't have enough basketballs to go around for the player Amari Bailey is when he's at his best, which is a dominant scorer. Every year there's another hype prospect coming out that no matter how young you are, have more of a mystique and presumed potential, who may come in with more invested in him, selected in a spot where opportunity is guaranteed. Bailey did show some good signs in his time in the G League, like shooting over 40% from 3. No matter what league you're in, that's always a good sign, and was a question mark on him entering the draft. He still has to prove that on the NBA level, but a good sign nonetheless. All in all, I think Amari Bailey made a tough move from the start when he was right on the door and 1 year shy of being in the perfect draft, which was 2024 instead of 2023. He's one of those guys that needed an extra year. He simply didn't do enough in college in the right areas. He's good, but he's undersized and plays a certain way that isn't where the game is heading, more of what it used to be. Already in a position he's fighting for a roster spot, opposed to coming in with a guarantee. Solid player, still young enough to turn it around, but for these reasons, his growth is being stunted. Salute, much respect. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.